Hey guys and girls, Bored now, back with you on this video. I will be talking about Season 1, Episode 1 of Star Trek Picard. The episode is called The Next Generation, Part 1. Full spoilers from the start of this review. So this is it. This is what they're promising is the final season of Star Trek Picard. And it's going to be the season where they get all of the Next Generation main crew back together for one last adventure, I'm assuming. So this is what the show has been building to from the start. It's been a very nostalgic show from the beginning, really. That was definitely a theme in the opening season mostly, and since then we've had cameos from various characters from the Trekverse. So just to give you a bit of an idea of how I've felt about Picard up to this point, it's been a mixed bag, really. I enjoyed the first season quite a lot. I think the character stuff in that was very good, and it was enjoyable at times, some good action stuff. It definitely wasn't perfect. I mean, the villains really sucked in that season, and I hated their whole plot, but for the most part, I think they made it enjoyable and it was fun to watch. And certainly most of the stuff with the main characters I thought were good. Season 2, I wasn't so keen on. It started off promisingly, and for a while I did think it's going to be better than Season 1, but then it just became such a mess by the end, such a shit show, and really tedious to watch by the end, just a bit of a mess. So it was a big letdown after the first season. So let's see what they can do for, as I said, what they're saying is the final season. And the way we start is with Beverly Crusher showing her age, and her ship is under attack. She herself gets wounded, so she sends out a distress signal to Picard, because of course she does. He receives the message and he wonders what exactly the message is about. So he leaves Chateau Picard for one last adventure, and he meets with his good old friend William Riker. They determine then the decoded message is something to do with a virus from their past. But as is normally the case, they need a ship. They need the Starship for their mission. But not for the first time. It turns out then there's a rather frosty new captain of the Enterprise. The ship in this is called Titan. The new captain is called Shaw, and he isn't willing to grant them access to a mission, because it turns out that the mission would take the crew outside of Starfleet territory, basically. So he's not willing to do that. He gives them a very frosty reaction, says this is a new era now, and they have problems. 709 returns. She is now the new captain of this ship, and going by the name Henson, and there's various other things. Raffi returns as well. She's gonna figure in somehow. She's now a junkie. So that's the setup, really. And boy, what a stinky comeback episode this was. This was absolutely tedious to get through. At times it was laughably bad. It really plodded along. There was a lot of annoying, predictable, silly character beats that didn't really add up. It was a slog to get through this first episode of the new season. I barely liked any of it. There were good scenes. It wasn't without good scenes. There was stuff I quite enjoyed. But you know what's funny is some of the stuff I enjoyed was the nostalgia stuff, and just some of the little winks and nods and just add-ons. And a lot of times, or at least sometimes, if you are a bit more of a Trek casual, which I wouldn't say, I'm a pretty big Trek fan, but I'm also not a super fan, and I don't have all the knowledge, especially from the TV shows. Like, I've seen more of the films than I have the TV stuff, but I would describe myself as a pretty big Trek fan, but we do live in an age now where nostalgia overkill is a big problem in TV and films. But in this first episode, that stuff didn't really bother me. I thought it was actually quite well done, and there was a little bit of a charm. Now, one thing about the Next Generation theme, and by the end of this season, I am wondering if, like, maybe there'll be like a passing of the torch, and that we might introduce a whole new generation of characters to move things forward. You've already had that a little bit when we see this new crew. One of them is related to Geordi, so that's another like wink to the fans. But as I said, it's weird because a lot of that stuff didn't really bother me too much. It has a very classic Next Gen feel with the opening credits, the cut to the ship, the use of like the old theme at times. That was very nicely done, and I'm always going to enjoy that stuff. The cut to the ship was very good, and the old school look of it on the outside. But they now call it Titan because things have moved on, but it's like a new model. So there's actually some nice stuff with moments like that. But first of all, the thing to say is then the episode just wasn't that enjoyable. Like, when you have Picard and Riker together in scenes, you expect there to be some sort of spark, you expect some banter, some wit. Like, you expect those scenes to be quite lively and entertaining, but they just weren't. It just felt like they were going through the motions. And the scenes were just plodding on for too long, and there just wasn't any, like, entertaining gags or witty exchanges. Like, the jokes in their scenes were pretty weak, and Picard in particular, like, really starting to show his age. And like, I don't mind that too much if the plot can work around that stuff, which I think it probably has done, at least in the first season. I thought they did. Second season, not so much, but up to a point you can work around that in the plot. But this just stood out like a sore thumb, really. But yeah, that was the whole problem with this episode, is it just felt like really miserable. It's like everybody was miserable and just bitching and complaining all the time, and it just felt so forced. It almost like the writers thought, well, what we're going to do is going to give this a really moody, gritty, grounded edge, which you don't always want from Star Trek. A bit of that can go a long way, but even if you say, okay, that's a good idea, let's do it, there's nothing wrong with a darker tone. But I just think by making them moody and just whinging all the time and just talk these sort of overlong speeches that don't really go anywhere, that's not really the same as making it like legitimately like dark or eerie or just giving it a bit of a feel. It just felt forced. It didn't really feel like true, and it just makes the characters annoying, really. And Raffi, I might as well mention Raffi because she's a good example of this. When she shows up in the first scene back, we find out her and Seven have split up, and she immediately, because she goes into this bar because she's looking for like tech for like the Enterprise, and she keeps going on about like end of the world style tech, she immediately bitches to like the alien who she's trying to get like the tech from. She immediately starts bitching. Oh, I've been dumped by my girlfriend. We find out she's a junkie, which is just so on the nose, and she's just so moody and like just so boring to watch. And they start talking in riddles. They start talking about the Red Lady, which is something she's got to find in this episode. And it's not revealed what the Red Lady is. But just terms like that, the Red Lady, it doesn't really feel like Star Trek. It feels like something out of a David Lynch movie. And this is part of the problem, is that they're just being too far the other way, where it doesn't really feel like classic Star Trek. It only feels like classic Star Trek in some of the nods and the winks and certain little moments like the cut to the ship and certain lines. But in general, this doesn't really feel like classic Star Trek. And it definitely hasn't got the right balance. But Raffi, I just found her annoying from the moment she got on screen. You've got this really tedious scene as well where she's obviously on her way to look for this lady red lady, and she's just like talking to like her operating systems, and she's being grumpy with the operating systems as well, and it's revealed that the operating systems, contrary to what Raffi thinks, actually knows everything about her life, which is a surprise to Raffi. But they go back to, I think it was District 7, and it turns out District 7 gets like blown up, and that's a whole thing. But yeah, just jumping back to the main plot, the Picard and Riker stuff was really boring. Unfortunately, because I love both of those characters. Riker's a great character, and I enjoyed his presence in the other two seasons, but and it's not really their fault. Like I don't really blame the actors for this stuff. I just think the way the scenes were written was like really bad, and from the start of this episode, it just felt very plodding, because you have the scene in Chateau Picard with him and his Irish lady. I always forget her name, but they're settling down, and once again it's like talk of nostalgia. It's because it's like on like Starfleet Day or week or something, and they're talking about how Riker and Picard are going to give like speeches, and there's a reference to how Geordie's now like running the museum, which okay, that's fair enough, I guess. And Picard has like a framed picture of the Enterprise, but there's all this talk about nostalgia and about memories, and it's just this thing when they, because Irish lady has this line about how really like like memories are important or something, she says, but it's like Picard responds with a line about how he's not one for legacy, he just wants his next adventure, which is, first of all, it's like, come on, you should be settling down by now. You shouldn't be actively looking for a new adventure, because this is before he gets the message from Beverly, and that's just okay. It's so obvious that's what's going to happen. But secondly, it's like, really? You've just been waxing lyrical and talking about people from your past and nostalgia, and really this whole show has been about like mortality, like Picard's mortality and him looking back to the past, and then he's got the nerve to say he's not one to leave a legacy. He's one always looking forward, always looking for a new mission. It's like, come on. It's like, yeah, let's get consistent here. And then when they get the message from Beverly, it's actually Irish lady who persuades Picard to to go on the mission. But there's just so many predictable plot beats, so many like things that they've done before, and they're just recycling. Because then when they get to the ship, when they get to Starfleet, like Riker uses like his sort of credentials to like invite Picard, and they meet up with 7 of 9, and she's obviously now the captain of this ship. But yeah, like they're warned then Shaw isn't gonna like the idea of them going into unknown territory, going like outside of like Federation airspace, and he gives them a frosty reception at this lunch. But once again, this new character of Shaw, I just thought he was a bit of a weird character. It's like he just came off as this zany like stand-up comedian, the way he was like interacting and sort of mocking them, and he seemed like he was a little bit of a drunk. The actor himself, I thought, was decent. I thought I quite liked the actor, but the character I just didn't really get. Like, he didn't really feel like someone who would be like the boss of like Starfleet of this crew. It just didn't really connect to me, and like the dinner scene itself wasn't too bad, but his character I just didn't really like get into at first. Now he's gonna appear more, obviously, but so maybe I'll get more into him. But I just thought he was a bit of a weird choice as a character. And another thing to say is, like, when you had these really slow monologue style scenes, like the stuff with Riker and Picard, like, which did just seem like they were two old geezers in a pub, that stuff was just like, it's like they were going for like a very arty, like indie style film, like this character study and interaction type film, and it's like, come on, there's definitely room for that in Star Trek, but let's get the plot going. Let's cut out some of these dreary sort of exchanges with these two characters reminiscing. There's a line at one point about how Riker needs to give his family a break, so there's a hint there that him and Troy are going through some marriage problems maybe. But yeah, the stuff with Shaw just wasn't that convincing for me, and then it's just really lazy plotting, because like at one point 7 gets Picard and Riker up because they've turned in for the night, and she gets tough on them because she wants to know why they're really there, and they tell her, and it turns out she intends on helping them, like she's going behind Shaw's back. And this scene once again feels so unlike Star Trek, because 7 is whining as well. Everybody in this opening episode is whinging away like nothing else, and they go quite heavy with like the swearing in this episode, and I don't mind a little bit of swearing, but you know, to keep swearing and using this type of language doesn't really feel like classic Star Trek, and once again that's what 7's doing in this scene. But she's bitching a lot about how, because you get a message to a reference to Janeway. She mentions how her and Picard persuaded her to become captain, and then she's regretting it. It's like, well, I didn't do all this just to take orders from someone like Shaw, and that's it. That's the reason she decides to help Riker and Picard. It's because she's rebelling against Shaw. It's like, come on, that is so lame. So that's it. She just like allows them to escape and go on the mission and take the shuttle, takes take the spaceship for the mission. And that's it. Shaw gets up and he realizes what's going on, because it pops up then like someone's taking the ship. So, and Seven's in hot water. But it's just one of those things where it was set up, then this isn't going to be easy for them to go on a mission and use Federation property. Obviously, you know, some way that they're going to do it, but it just jumped to it so quickly. It was just an easy little fix, and just this idea that Seven, just to spite Shaw would do this, and he just has a line about, well, loyalty to your friends is going to cost you on this occasion. But just really unconvincing plotting, and just not a lot of engaging things going on with the characters and stuff in this episode. It ends with them getting to Beverly Crusher's ship, and it turns out she's injured. She's in like a cryo chamber type thing, and like the one other reveal is then this guy comes out of nowhere and like points a phaser at them, and it's revealed, and there's this really slow pause when, as he's about to reveal who he is, and he says, "I'm Beverly's son," and you get this dramatic reaction from Picard, which it was pretty funny the way he did a double take. But yeah, then the sun starts going off at them, saying, "You've now led like our enemy to us," and you get this big other ship that appears out of nowhere and is like hovering over them, and that's the cliffhanger. But there's just stuff there where Picard obviously didn't know that she had a son, and that's a whole new thing. So whatever. But that's the episode, and definitely the weakest of the 3 season premieres on this show. It really was quite boring to watch, I'm afraid, and some lame writing. So that's Star Trek Picard, the start of season 3. Hopefully things can only get better in this season, but it was pretty uninspired stuff, I'm afraid to say. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe as always. Share me out on social media. And I'll see you guys again soon. Take care, guys.